Are we ready? Okay. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for being here. I want to first thank Superintendent David Brown for standing here today and standing with our city, truly from your first day, and especially in recent, hard, long days and weeks. And that goes for the entire men and women of the Chicago Police Department. I also want to give my heartfelt thanks to Pastor Chris Harris of Bright Star Community Church for his passionate leadership. This is a man who not only loves his community, loves the city, and has done a lot with his church community to really talk about hard truths, face them, but also come up with concrete solutions and recognizing the trauma that way too many people in our community suffer and experience every day. This man went all the way to Israel to bring back healing to this community. He's a true leader and a gift to our city, and I thank you, Pastor Chris. I also want to thank OEMC Director Rich Guidis and the whole OEMC team. They've been working night and day for 10 plus weeks, and particularly over these last weeks. These are difficult times, and you and your team have been fearless and steady, and that's exactly what we need in our emergency operation. So thank you, Rich. We've called this press conference to announce some of the actions our city will be taking this weekend, starting tonight, to support and give space to the peaceful protests and marches that are scheduled to take place, as well as the measures we will be taking to ensure that our neighborhood businesses and community corridors are safe and secure and protected from the unacceptable violence and damage that they have experienced, particularly in our neighborhoods on the south and west sides. In an effort to prevent the widespread violence and destruction we experience, and in response to requests from a variety of stakeholders, from elected officials to the faith community and ordinary citizens, and certainly our business community, we will be devoting additional city resources into our neighborhoods and commercial corridors to ensure their safety. This includes directing more than 300 trucks from our Department of Streets and Sanitation, Department of Transportation, and Department of Water Management to provide strategic traffic supports at more than 175 commercial corridors and communities across Chicago, particularly on the south and the west side. And these big streets and sand trucks that you see behind me, these are exactly the kind of trucks that we will be positioning across the south and the west side to support our businesses and the commercial corridors. Additionally, we have partnered with more than 100 providers for security who will be placed strategically alongside the corridors to support businesses to enhance security in these communities. Furthermore, I want to remind our local business owners and managers to text SHIBIZ, that's CHIBIZ, to 67283, 67283, or visit chicago.gov/ShyBiz alerts. This will allow you to opt in to receive targeted emergency alerts for the business community via ShyBiz emergency alerts. This is a new service that we are providing, and I want to make sure that we spread the word far and wide. We need as many businesses as possible to sign up for these alerts. I also want to announce that we will be opening Grant Park and Union Park in an effort to support our residents wishing to express their outrage and righteous pain over the murder of George Floyd. We want to make sure that you have the space to lift your voices and make yourselves heard. And we will be taking a number of other precautionary measures to make sure that we're supporting and protecting neighborhoods. We'll be taking some actions regarding bridges and public transportation. And on public transportation, you can find those changes at transitchicago.com for the latest updates. For now, our 9 to 6 p.m. curfew will remain in effect, and we hope that we'll be in a position to lift that soon. It goes without saying that our our primary responsibility as leaders is the safety and security of our residents. And we are doing everything that we can to fulfill that obligation. However, what I don't want is for us to focus and to turn away from really what's most important in this moment. The fact of George Floyd's murder, captured on video, was painful to everyone. Of course, painful for his family to have to bear witness to his killing. Painful for the residents of Minneapolis and the entire state of Minnesota, but painful for us here in Chicago and across the country. It brought up painful memories of others who have died at the hands of police violence, both in this city and across the country. And as the superintendent, I think, has said very eloquently and loud and clear, what those Minneapolis officers did isn't consistent with anything about responsible policing. It was rogue actions that can never be supported, where they tarnish the badge and hurt every officer who struggles every single day to do the right thing in the face of very difficult and trying circumstances. But that's important that we not lose sight of why we're here, why so many people in Chicago and across the country are lifting up their voices to say enough is enough, and rightfully so. We have to make sure that we don't lose sight of that in the midst of all the other things that are going on. I want to make sure we focus on that and we support the righteous outrage that people feel and their ability to safely exercise their sacred First Amendment rights. I want to make sure that we don't lose sight of that. Let me also say a few other things. Well, I believe that the vast majority of Chicago police officers have done their job well and under difficult circumstances have exercised restraint. Unfortunately, we are seeing evidence of some who have not. I've said this before, and I'll say it every day. We will not tolerate people who cross the line. We will not tolerate excessive force. We will not tolerate profanity and homophobic comments that demean the badge, demean the honor of being a Chicago police officer, and demean the value of who we are as Chicagoans. We will not tolerate that. Officers who choose to do those things, or to tape over their badges, or to turn off their body-worn cameras, all things that violate very clear directives of the Chicago Police Department. If you are one of those officers, we will find you, we will identify you, and we will strip you of your police powers. Period. We are not going to tolerate this in our city. You are demeaning all of your colleagues who are working their tails off on 12-hour shifts to keep our city safe. Shame on you.
That's right.
Shame on you.
That's right.
We will not tolerate this, and we will take decisive action, and not only stripping you, as appropriate, you will be fired from the Chicago Police Department. I have spent a lot of my career doing everything I can, and I will continue to make the Chicago Police Department the best and finest in the nation. And we can have no tolerance for those who don't understand the privilege of wearing this badge. We will not rest until you are identified and until you are weeded out. We have a lot of work to do on the path and the journey towards police reform and accountability. And we will not be deterred from making that a reality, and certainly not by elements within the police department who believe that they can do what they want, when they want, whenever they want. No, that will not be the case. You will be found, you will be stripped, and where appropriate, you will be fired. And I want the supervisors out there to understand this is not going to be something that's going to be borne solely by the line police officers. You have a responsibility as well. And every single time I see one of these cases, the question I ask is, where was the supervision? And we will find out the answer to that question. And if you have failed, then we will take appropriate action. I understand all about honest mistakes, but some of the things that we've seen aren't honest mistakes. These are people who do not share our values and will not be part of the Chicago Police Department. I want that message to be loud and clear. We have to move forward as a city united. We have to move forward as a city who understands the interconnectedness of all of us. This bond that we have as individuals, no matter where we live, no matter who we are, no matter what God we worship. That is how we move forward and heal the pain and misery of this moment. Each of us has a responsibility in this moment to dig down deeper and make sure that our better selves is who is presented every single day, in every conversation, and certainly as we conduct ourselves in public. I say this all the time, and I will repeat it. Our children are watching us. They need us as adults to be leaders, to be models of the behavior that we want them to emulate. That can't be done when we say, well, in this time, how do we express our values? We can't lose our moral center. We cannot do that. Each of us has a responsibility. I hope we find it in our heart to express ourselves in a way that is peaceful, that is respectful of our neighbors, particularly our neighbors' rights and our neighbors' property. That's critical if we are to get beyond this moment. Yes, we need to have a reckoning. Absolutely. Our past is very much our present. But the way we change our future is by taking advantage of the opportunity that this moment presents to be better, to be more inclusive, to be more fair, and to be more just. That is the Chicago that I see, that is right within our grasp, but it's up to each of us to share that value and to live that value every single day. That's my hope. That's my vision. That's what I will be working on. And I need you, I implore you to join me on this most important mission in this time. I will now ask Superintendent Brown to speak.
Thank you, Mayor. Chicagoans are looking forward to a beautiful weekend, and the Chicago Police Department is working very hard to make sure everyone is safe to exercise their First Amendment rights, a sacred right we hold. We are also busy protecting people and property in every neighborhood in our city. As you just heard from the mayor, CPD has brought in federal, state, and local partners to help. Our combined efforts stress the safety and security of all 77 neighborhoods throughout this city. We will focus our resources on securing our commercial corridors while maintaining a high visible presence in residential areas. CPD has been working around the clock, 12-hour days, without any off days. And we will be also partnering with the private sector to help secure our south and west sides. We have established a plan with other city agencies to deploy salt trucks, water department vehicles, and other equipment to help maintain order and restrict access to vulnerable areas. We will not tolerate those who would seek to use planned, peaceful protests to commit crime or cause destruction. I met with business owners this week along 63rd Street on the southwest side. I saw businesses that were boarded up and one business that welded every door and window shut. But I also saw hope. I met with a restaurant owner who could not wait to sell jerk chicken to hungry residents again. I met with officers who were willing to partner with business owners to help the retail strip to keep everyone safe. The work to rebuild our neighborhood has already begun, and we cannot take a step backwards. I want to thank all of our officers for their resolve and restraint But I also want to make this point, and the mayor said it much better than I. We cannot afford to let any officer tarnish this star. My best friend in Dallas was a police officer who was killed in the line of duty in 1988, Walter Williams. He was one of those officers that did the job the right way, ethical. He had served in the Army for 20 years and came on as a second career as a police officer. He came on at 42 years old. When I was 22. We were in a rookie class together. I consoled his wife and kids while he lay there fighting for his life. And he lost his battle with that fight and gave the ultimate sacrifice. It's the memory of Walter Williams that endures in my heart today as I serve Chicago. And think about the many officers in Chicago who have made the ultimate sacrifice, doing the job the right way, giving their life for this city. We can't afford to allow people on this department, officers who are vulgar, who are disrespectful, who are harmful physically to our residents, to represent us without being held accountable. We will hold you accountable for your misconduct, and we will be firm. And I reject the notion that you can't support police, which I support police officers, while still holding them accountable. I reject that notion that you have to make this binary choice, one or the other. You support cops by holding officers accountable. I want to thank these officers that do the job the right way. I want to thank our residents for their vigilance and their trust. We are all working together toward a better city. Let's do it together, and let's do it safely. Now I turn the podium over to Pastor Chris Harris. Man, you remind me of my pastor in Dallas, Pastor Harris. A few times we met. I'm gonna have to join your church, brother.
Look forward to it.
All right, Pastor Harris.
Thank you so much, Superintendent. Thank you, Mayor. I just want to say that tremendous honor to all of the leadership of our city and our county and our state. First of all, I want to say that I'm not really a fan of press conferences because, in my opinion, clergy don't need to be on cameras unless they are doing something to solve problems for their congregants or their constituents in the community. And I want to give a shout out to all of the houses of worship that are now in the streets trying to help, along with my fellow community-based organizations. Thank you. Mama, dad, grandparents, cousin, siblings, spouses, boo and bae. Take a clip of this press conference on your phone, because the reality is you need to text this to your family members, because the folks we really want to talk to don't watch the news that much. Let me say to this city, don't forget what got us here. Systemic racism that produces or protects police brutality. And this is truly a defining moment for our black community. African Americans, let me share this. There has never been a time in the history of this racist country where so many white people are paying attention and asking, how can we help black communities? Never been a time like that. And this next couple of months will either set the black community back for decades or push us forward decades if we handle this wisely and set forth an agenda, make a demand, and clarify our ask. Let me just say this. White people are asking, how can we heal these wounds? But let me just say to the white people, some of you are clearly out of touch, because we are still bleeding, and we are still emotionally, psychologically, financially, and even spiritually in pain. And I want to say to the organizers, 3 things to focus on, even to the pastors. Contemplation. Think about the message that you want to get out, and please stay on message. Stop doing gumbo rallies where you throw everything in. Stay on message. Number 2, concentration. How can we do this in a way where more people who don't look like us and don't live where we live will come because they know they won't get hurt. And then number 3, collaboration. Now this is a big one, because siloed efforts just might be laced with how big and strong it makes individuals look for selfish reasons. No, there is power in numbers. I'm going to ask everybody out here, since this is the only church I can have today, shout these words: better together.
Better together.
I said I didn't hear y'all say better together.
Better together.
Listen to me good. Black looting does not solve the problem of systemic racism that produce or protects police brutality. But for the white people who don't understand, Dr. King said it best: riots are the language of the unheard. When we kneel peacefully, you don't like it, but we still die. When we march peacefully, you don't like it, but we still die. When Trayvon Martin walks in his own community or other communities with Skittles and a drink in the hand, you don't like it, and we still die. See, the reality is, looting wasn't so bad when white people took our matriarchs and patriarchs from Africa and put them in chains to die in the bottom of slave ships and stole land and possessions. That was looting too.
That's right.
Then, watch this, they made us build a country against our will that we now don't feel safe in and we're dying in every day. Come on, think about it. Black people, I want to encourage you, stop allowing white so-called supportive people who are really undercover antagonists. Stop allowing them to come into our community and fire us up enough to burn down our own communities. Because remember, when the march is over, they're going to go right back to their own community where they still got grocery stores, where they still have places to live, where they still have jobs and groceries on the shelf. And now grandmama and them can't even get no prescription drugs because we allowed outsiders to come in and send us off. Listen to me good. On this Tuesday, in a 72-hour turnaround time, the Lord gave me a vision, and we had over 10,000 plus people from Christian, Muslim, Jewish, Baha'i, and Catholic communities to peacefully protest in the black metropolis where the Great Migration is known, on Dr. Martin Luther King Drive, without one incident. And let me just say this very clearly. We can do it, and we can do it the right way. Now I want to be clear, and I want to give a shout out to the police who marched with us. And let me be very clear. Yes, I wanted the police to march with us, not because we want to co-sign their horrible behaviors of the few bad apples, but we wanted the police to be close enough to hear us tell the good ones we're praying for you, and tell the bad ones now you are the prey. And hear me when I tell you this: it is difficult for us to talk to you police when we feel you are targeting us. Let me say it again: it's difficult for us to talk to you when we feel like you are targeting us. Here is how I close, and please get this: don't stop marching. I'm begging you, please keep on marching, but do it the right way. And yes, we might march again. The faith leaders, we're going to march locally, we're going to march vocally, but we're going to march peacefully. And Miss Mayor, let me tell you, since you're doing such a great job, you told us we couldn't have church, but you suggested we can have it outside. So guess what? Go ahead and give us Soldier Field. Let's have it outside together. Give us White Sox Park and let us have it together. Give us downtown Grant Park or Millennium Park so we can all come together. And our first worship service together as black, as Christians, as Muslims, as Jews, as Baha'i, as Catholic, we'll hold up our fists together, black and white, and shout the words, Black Lives Matter. That's the sermon that we need to hear. Let us have it outside. So those that want to join us, I want to encourage you. Please use this hashtag, Between the Marches. Everybody say hashtag.
Hashtag.
Between the marches.
Between the marches.
See, here's the way we got to ask ourselves, what are we going to do in between the marches? It's not enough for us to get together and say, no justice, no peace. I want to challenge you organizers. Define what justice really is, and then demand it. Don't ask for permission. And hear me good. Yes, we're going to march again. Text the words, what is next, without any spaces, to 55469. Good police are to have their own marches too. I'm going to say it again, the police ought to be having their own marches to call out your homies. Why not consider public acknowledgement, public apology, and public accountability? You tell your homies, tell your coworkers, look, I didn't train for this and I don't get paid enough for all of this drama, that racism is causing, these few bad apples. I'm gonna tell you this, we plan to point you out, we plan to call you out, and we certainly plan to flush you out and get you out. Long live the memory of George Floyd, Laquan McDonald, Sandra Bland, and so many others who were humans who became hashtags. Black Lives Matter. Don't forget what got us here. And I can't tell blacks to stop looting until I tell whites to start listening. Sometime when you're preaching, you get inspired, you forget with the next part. I want to bring up the director, Rich Guidance. Clap your hands for him.
Thank you, Pastor. It's very kind. Reverend, thank you. Superintendent, Mayor, thank you. The OEMC, as everybody knows, is a support and coordinating entity. We've had our Emergency Operations Center obviously activated for coronavirus since early March. So that continues today and will continue as long as it needs to until the situation resolves itself. The mayor had us operate the Summer Operation Center a few weeks back. Obviously that's been escalated over the last week or so. We realize that we have 240 miles of city proper to pay attention to and support. That's why the mayor said at the beginning of her comments about all the assets that are going to our neighborhoods throughout our city. CDOT, Street and Sanitation, Water Department. We have everybody who we need is in our Emergency Operations Center. People's Gas, Commonwealth Edison, Amtrak, and Metro. So we're coordinating all the efforts out of OEMC, and we'll continue to do so as long as needed. Mayor, that's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you. Love you back. So before I take questions, let me just say one more thing. As the superintendent said, and I observed firsthand, businesses want to be back. One of the questions that I was asking when I went around the city on Monday and Tuesday, particularly of small businesses, is should we open on Wednesday or should we delay? And universally, even businesses that had no ability to open this week because they had lost all their inventory, their storefronts needed to be rebuilt, even those business owners said, Mayor, we need to open. So I want to thank all the business people, all the employees, and all the customers who are out there, who have swept up the glass, turned over unturned furniture, and put themselves back together to be able to open for their employees and for their customers this week. I want to give a special notice to companies like Mariano's and other grocery stores, other pharmacies, and other big box retailers across the city who have not abandoned Chicago. That's important. They could have done a lot of things, but what they did is got to work and reopen their stores so their customers could be able to shop and to get basic needs and essentials. We have to thank them, and the best way we can thank them is by patronizing these stores. We're going to do our part to make sure that they are protected. I need people in neighborhoods who have access to these stores to support them. Even if it's with a modest amount of money, go in, thank them for being there, and supporting them by purchasing goods and services. With that, I'll take your questions. I think we've got an order that we go through.
Sorry, Sarah. Mayor, I'll let the pastor's question be the first question here. What do you want to do with houses of worship when it comes to this weekend? And especially, what about the pastor's idea of opening up places like Soldier Field, White Sox Park, as socially distant places of worship?
So, working with a working group of the faith community, we put out specific guidance today that allows for in-person worship of 25% capacity or a maximum of 50. We're going to start there. We're going to give churches the ability to see how that goes, and then we'll be in constant dialogue to see if we need to make some modifications or adjustments along the way. I know people miss church. I understand that. I was brought up in the church. I've said this before, my mother's 91 years old. She goes to church, Bible study. She is a stalwart in her church. She misses her church community. And it's not the same. And unfortunately, many of our elders don't know how to access Facebook or live stream or Periscope. They don't. And so they miss their church community. And I understand that. And we need to make sure that we're doing everything we can safely and carefully in a step-by-step fashion to bring people back in to houses of worship, regardless of the faith tradition. And I think we've taken a good first step, and we'll be in conversation to see where we need to make adjustments and what are additional supports that we need so that people can come in and worship, but do it safely without worrying about the spread of coronavirus. And to Pastor Chris's bold suggestion, I would say stay tuned. I have some thoughts that I have for him.
Thank you, Mayor.
Mayor, you're mentioning that Grant Park will be open for people to express their First Amendment rights. Will it also be open for people to recreate in, or will it be just for the people who want to express their
No, the
rights?
parks are opening. And we'll be giving more detail on that. But we are going to be opening parks west of Lakeshore Drive to start. And we're working on plans to open up the lakefront, and I hope to be able to announce those soon.
And as far as the lakefront goes, is it still going to be the parks closed? Will the trail open first, or will the
No,
trail...
I think we'll probably open up the parks first and then the trails next. I just want to make sure that we have a very solid plan to give people access to the lakefront where we don't see huge congregation and run the risk of having a spread and setting us back. All this is about being careful, following the public health guidance, but we know that people need to have access to the outdoors. It's safer outside, and we want to make sure that people have the ability to exercise, just to breathe some fresh air, and I know the lakefront is a big, important part of that. That's why we've been working really hard to come up with specific ways in which we can grant access to the lakefront. As you well know, people using all kinds of, doing all kinds of exercise, walking, biking, skateboarding, all of that is happening on the lakefront. We want people to be able to do that, but do it safely.
You've been very clear about the way you think Chicago police should behave relative to protesters and what the repercussions for their not behaving that way should be. But in Buffalo, New York, when 2 police officers were suspended for pushing down an officer or a protester, 53 other officers resigned their posts in protest of that punishment. Are you afraid that something like that could happen here?
No, I'm not. And I can't obviously account for what happened. Look, the reality is we have 13,400 sworn police officers. Absolutely, we're disturbed by, and I say we because I know the superintendent shares this view. Absolutely, we're disturbed by the images that we've seen on screen. And again, if you believe that you've been harassed, unfairly treated by the police, call 311. COPA set up a specific team last week to handle complaints of excessive force and other police actions, and they're hard at work. I talk to the head of COPA every day, not to interfere in investigations, that's not my job, but to just make sure, have you seen this video? Have you seen this? What are you doing? Where are we? But look, the vast majority of police officers, and I worked in the police department, I'm sure some of you remember. I know police officers. I've spent a lot of time with them, and I'm tough. I'm tough about police reform and accountability, but I also know in my heart that the vast majority of our officers want to and are doing their job the right way. That's why, as the superintendent says, there's no conflict between saying we support our officers who are out there every single day experiencing a high degree of trauma under very difficult circumstances, but the ones that cross the line, they hurt everybody. They hurt everybody, and we have to call them out. And so I don't have a concern. You know, unfortunately, we have a long history in the city of Chicago around police reform and accountability. We have a long history of some officers who believe that they're above the law. We've never seen a retreat from the vast majority of officers to do their job, and I don't expect that now.
Our next question comes from Gaynor Hall from WGN, and she would like your reaction to the police board president, John Foreman, saying that police struck him 5 times with batons during a protest over the weekend.
When I spoke to President Foreman, who, as you know, was my vice president when I was president of the police board, and who was a personal friend, I told him he had to file a complaint, and he has. There's no reason that should have happened. He is hurting physically. I think he's hurting emotionally, and what happened to him was unacceptable. And so there's an active investigation that's been underway. As I said, I found out about this the day that it happened, probably within hours it happened. I talked to him. Obviously, my first regard was for his physical safety, and I urged him, and he has filed a complaint.
Heather Cerrone from WTTW asks a similar question. What assurance can you give Chicagoans that they won't be subject to the same kind of abuse from police?
Look, what I can tell you is that, as I've said, I think a pretty strong statement every single day when these things have popped up, and again today, we're not going to tolerate people crossing the line, period. We're just not. And we're going to hold people accountable who do.
Question from Kelly Bauer from Block Club Chicago. She asks, are you concerned about the ACLU's legal threat over Chicago's curfew?
I have a great deal of respect for the ACLU. We've been in dialogue. We'll continue to be in dialogue. Look, I can tell you that if you asked me a week ago, would we have a curfew in Chicago, I would have said no, absolutely not. But we're living in extraordinary times. What I experienced, what we all experienced, what we all witnessed over the weekend and into Monday was something that we haven't seen in the city, particularly not with the magnitude of it across so many neighborhoods, maybe ever, and certainly not since the 1968 riots. So we have taken careful measures after a lot of deliberation and consultation. Superintendent and I talk every single day about a number of issues, but the curfew is chief among them. I want to see what happens this weekend, and I look forward to making sure that obviously that our neighborhoods are safe, and we will pull back any measures that we do not believe are necessary to do that.
Sarah and
Go ahead.
Karen, you want to jump in?
Sure. I wanted to ask, it sounds like you have a good plan for protecting commercial corridors on the south and west sides, but last weekend was one of the bloodiest weekends in the city in a long time. A lot of gun violence. What's the plan to try and prevent some of that?
Well, I'll let the superintendent speak to the specifics. We don't take our eye off the ball with violence. Last weekend was distressing. And obviously we were trying to respond to the wildfire of criminal activity that spread through the neighborhoods, but we never, ever take our eye off of the violence. And we want to make sure, and I think we have a good plan this weekend, to make sure that the districts have the resources they need to be able to respond to whatever the public safety issue is that arises. Superintendent?
Yeah, much of what's happened in the neighborhoods, particularly west and south side that you mentioned, has overlapped with some of the looting and disturbances that we've responded to. So it's been a singular issue as far as geography is concerned. But where we have the time, we have pivoted to purely crime fighting using data to deploy our resources. But much of that has overlapped with where we've seen much of the disturbance in the neighborhoods.
Can you speak up?
Sure.
Why don't you use the microphone?
Thank you. I just spoke to President Foreman about it. What kind of ways with policy could you preempt any kind of abuse toward peaceful protesters or bystanders on the part of police? Is there any kind of action that the city council would take or that you would support on these measures?
Look, the Chicago Police Department has a stack of general orders, special orders, and other orders that are about the size of 2 New York City phone books. If they still exist, I'm not sure. So the issue isn't the policies. The issue is making sure that officers follow their training and that the supervision is clear about what is authorized and what is not. It's in the execution is where we've seen the lapses. And so we've got to make sure that the supervision is clear, it is tight, and that's why I said before, This is not a situation where we're just going to be looking to individual line officers. My question to the superintendent, my question to COPA, and my question to IAD is, where were the supervisors? The supervision is critical. Those sergeants, lieutenants, and the people that are out there in the field who are supposed to be supervising and making sure no lines are crossed, and making sure then that officers are held accountable when they do. So I have a lot of questions in every single one of these incidents about supervision, and I will make sure that I get answers, and that if there's a problem with supervision, that those supervisors are held accountable.
Last question over here, Mayor, from Greg Pratt at the Tribune. Will Lakeshore Drive remain open, and will there be any road restrictions downtown over the weekend?
There will be road restrictions downtown. We want to make sure that because we don't know exactly what the route is that some of these downtown protests will take, we will have road closures to minimize the number of cars. I've become very concerned seeing scenes of protests going down busy thoroughfares and cars going right in the middle of it. That's a recipe for disaster. So we want to minimize that by minimizing the number of cars that are going to be going downtown, and in particular areas where we know that there are going to be protests. I said this morning, and I'll repeat it. One of the reasons why we want to have dialogue with the march organizers is so that we can figure out a route that will keep them safe, that we will block traffic, we will make sure that intersections are secured. The last thing that we need is to have somebody who's out there peacefully exercising their First Amendment rights get hit by a car. So we're taking the steps that we need to make sure that we minimize car traffic in areas that we believe are going to be part of the protesters' routes.
Mayor, sorry, one last question from AD Quigg that just came in. Given how much you've toured the city in recent days and potential risk of COVID spread over the past week, are you and your staff being tested for COVID-19?
We have been tested, and we will continue to be tested.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.